Okay, so welcome to the circle of conferences, virtual conferences of CALAS, the Maria Isabel Marian Center for Advanced Latin American Studies, CALAS. And we have the pleasure now to have a really interesting debate and discussion on an imminent important question on Latin American topics, which is on slavery and enslaved peoples in Iberian America and the problem of Afro-Latinity. And first, I would like to present a little bit the context of this colloquy. First, it is the colloquy of the CALAS, as I've said before. And as the CALAS is also a center of for Latin American and for German universities, amongst them the University of Bielefeld. This colloquy is also integrated in the colloquy of Bielefeld's historical department, especially in the colloquy of global and entangled history, and the colloquy of inter-American studies. Furthermore, this colloquy is integrated in the colloquy of Jena University. So we are here together with several different universities in this discussion. And I think this is also one of the main aims of the CALAS, to bring together, to be a platform for various discussions. I would like to remind you that this session in Zoom is streamed on YouTube. So if you don't want that you have seen, if you're not paying well or whatever, you can switch off your camera. And later on, we have the facility. You can ask directly questions or ask questions in the chat. But now, as I said, we come directly to the point, the question of slavery and enslaved people in Iberian America. And for this question, we have amongst us one of the main experts in this field, which is Michael Zeuske. Michael is a professor emeritus for Iberian and Latin American history at the University of Cologne, and currently holds the position of principal investigator at the Center for Dependency and Slavery Studies at the University of Bonn. Furthermore, Michael is a CALAS fellow, and he already had been awarded several visiting fellowships in the United States, Canada, China, and other countries. Michael Zeuske has published extensively on Cuban and Venezuelan history and is one of the leading experts on Alexander von Humboldt's journeys in Latin America and the Caribbean. But the bulk of his scientific work is dedicated on research on slavery in a global perspective. His monumental handbook, Globalgeschichte der Sklaverei, Global History of Slavery, covers 10,000 years of forms of forced labor. In total, to date, he has published 17 books, 20 edited volumes, and nearly 200 journal and book chapters. So I don't want to go into detail on his broad public work of publication. Michael now would present a 35 minute intervention. And after that, we have directly a response, a short comment by a Latin American expert in this field, which is Maria Elisa Velazquez. She is a sociologist and anthropologist and currently holds the position of investigator and coordinator at the Mexican National Institute for Anthropology and History, a very renowned institution in Mexico and Latin America. She's also responsible for the National Program on Research and Afro-descendant people and cultural diversity in Mexico. She collaborates with several international institutions and has been member of the scientific committee of the UNESCO Slave Route Project. Of course, she has also published widely on these topics, both in historical and anthropological perspective. So now, once presented, our two colleagues who would intervene in this discussion, I would like to give the word directly to Michael to start with his presentation.
Many thanks, dear Olaf, and welcome to all colleagues, friends, amigas y amigos. I would like to start with some words in Spanish. Voy a hablar en inglés, que no me gusta tanto como español, pero lo voy a hacer. Sobre todo para los colegas en Bielefeld, que me gusta mucho que estén aquí porque es historia. Lo que estoy tratando de presentar es las Américas ibéricas dentro de la historia global y además dentro de lo que Olaf acaba de decir, dentro de las Américas. Es decir, si hablo de Américas, siempre hablo de todas Américas, incluyendo lo que siempre piensan que son algo muy especial, los Estados Unidos están dentro del enfoque. Diciendo eso, voy a cambiar al inglés. Y no me gusta tanto como el español, lo repito. I would like to change to English, and I would like to present my paper with the PowerPoint, which I will put now. Let me try it. Yes. I have to, well, okay. I should have put it in the presentation mode, but I can't, yeah, now. I will speak about this theme, slaveries, not slavery, slaveries, and enslaved people in Iberian America and the problem of Afro-Latinity. And I will I will speak about these themes, remaining you that I will put it into a global perspective and an American, all-American perspective. First, I will give a short introduction, then global plateaus of slavery, what I call plateaus or mesetas. Then I will speak about slave trades and slaveries in Africa in this perspective. I'm not an Africanist, but I have studied very, very much literature of very good Africanists about slave trade and slaveries in Africa, and the protagonism of elites from Africa in the slave trade. Then I will go to what I call the Atlantics. All you know, there were different slavery Atlantics in a more European perspective. And first Atlantic as an Iberian Atlantic or Spanish Atlantic or Portuguese Atlantic, and second Atlantic in the normal categorization. This is Northwest European Atlantic. Many forget that at the same time was an Portuguese Brazilian Atlantic, but much more bigger than any other. And what the normal or the traditional perspective is forgetting is the third Atlantic, what I call the hidden Atlantic. This is the Atlantic of the 19th century, when there is slave smuggle, first of all, to the Caribbean, Cuba, and to Brazil. And then I will speak about Iberian Americas itself and treating them as empires of slavery, not only Brazil, also Spanish America. And then I will, and I like the German word in the English text here, the Begriff, the concept of Afro-Latino. Or let's say the word first, and then the concept of Afro-Latino. So here have you a nice map of all slaveries of all time in the globus, practically. And what I will do, and I will show it in the map, I will do an AAA. That means I will take a perspective, a global historian perspective, south-south. I will not speak so much about Europe, also because slave trade has many to do with European countries also. But my main perspective is South Africa, the first A, Atlantic or the Atlantics, the second A, and the Americas as the third A. So the introduction, only some thoughts or some points in the introduction. Around 1450, slaveries existed on all coasts and territories of the whole Atlantic area, especially many enslaved slaveries and slave trades in Africa. The Iberians, and this is, I think this is in this perspective for Africanists, this is not new, but in this perspective, in our perspective, I think this is new, or something like new, a little bit new. Iberians come to the coast of Africa and get to know the capital of human bodies there. Because in Europe, you have, in the port cities of the Iberian countries, you have slavery in Atlantic, but in a minor scope, and not masses of war captives, some from the wars with the Ottoman Empire and so, but not so much as they learned anew in Africa and West Africa. The first Portuguese called explorers, the first Portuguese captains use this cativos, Africanos, the captives from Africa, as source for the population and accumulation, and they learn it there. They are beginning punctually the Atlantic slavery first of all in the Cape Verdes, in the Sao Tome Island, and in the Canary Islands. The Portuguese and the Iberians take this enslaved cativos with them to the Iberian colonies in first direct connection between Guinea, as Africa is called by then, and Las Indias. This is what Charles V is doing with the Portuguese king, saying they have not. This is very important for the research for the slave ships. I'm heavy research about slave ships, and for the captains as protagonists of capital accumulation. They allow the captains, the Iberian captains, to avoid smuggle, to go directly from the Cape Verdes and from Sao Tome to the Caribbean, to Las Indias. And there in the Iberian colonies in the 17th and in the 16th and 17th century, is developing this, what we know as slavery in the Americas, slavery of or enslavement of people from Africa as private property in different locations, including plantation and so on. But in the Americas, it's also, and this we all know from the excellent book from Andres Reséndez, the other slavery. That means plus the slaveries which are existing there already in the meantime of the colonization. Indigenous slaveries of indigenous people, Esclavitud de los Indios. So we have a broader perspective on all slaveries. And Andres Reséndez was saying there were more or less, this is an estimation or a high estimation, between 2.5 million and 5 million enslaved indigenous people in, first of all, Mexico, south of the United States, and Central America. So this is the other slavery, and to come to the point and to the concept of Afro, the descents of all these enslaved from Africa, not so the other slaveries, from the other slaveries, are called today Afros. So the global plateaus of slavery, I will let this only a few times here because it's very complicated. I could have 2 hours about this mesetas, tableaus, plateaus. If you want to read it in German, you can do it with the German version of the slavery book of the as Human History, and there is also a Spanish and translation into Spanish. So the main idea is to historicize the huge or the very big scope of slavery into slaveries and into chronological spatial dimensions. So we have a first dimension or a first plateau. This is slavery without institution, first of all, of women and children, which is beginning very early. Joe Miller, the well-known Africanist and historian of slavery, was saying this is possible that this starts already 20,000 years ago in the Magdalenian. Was a big man, was a big hunter who have children, more children and more women, and they are servants, a kind of servant for him. The special thing of these plateaus is they all stop, they all begin in the history, but they do not stop, with the relative exclusion of the third plateau. But first I will come to the second plateau. This is house or kin slavery. This means house groups with or from other groups, enslaved people or enslaved or women or children from the own group. And this is, for my view of the slavery, something like a Pandora's box for all slaveries. There are good reasons to think that this kind of slavery is the most extended slavery in world history. Then the well-known third plateau, the Atlantic slavery from around the middle of the 15th century to the Americas. We all know that was the formal abolition in Brazil, until the formal abolition in Brazil, 1888. But there were more longer slaveries in Africa. And to this plateau pertains, or part of this third plateau is also the second slavery, and the slavery modernity or slavery as capitalism, first of all in the south of the United States, in Cuba, or in the south of Brazil. The first plateau, the fourth plateau is very complicated, because all we know that this plateau from the abolition of slave trade and slavery in Great Britain is normally presented as a time of abolition. In many books about slavery, you will have a chapter about abolition in this time, beginning more or less in 1800 and or 1808. But if you look closer to the abolition of slave trades first, which is first from the European countries, then you will know that the Brazilians and the Cubans and the Uruguayans and many American ships and many US American captains are doing smuggle of slaves in this time. So that I call this century more or less until 1880 the hidden Atlantic. So about the other global plateaus, I will not speak here. These are we are coming until today, and here you have the literature where this is written down. Now, the first A in Africa. I take here only the chronological presentation by Joseph Miller, and he is presenting, you know, Joseph Miller is published until before his death. This very important book, The Problem of Slavery as History, a Global Approach. And there he's making this chronological ordering of slaveries in Africa. The first phase here from 20,000 years before. The second until the beginning of the Arab or Muslim expansion. And the third phase is, for me here, the most important, because he is speaking instead of a normal view that slavery in Africa is not so hard and there are few slaveries or there are other kind of slavery and so on. He is saying clearly that in this time you have massive enslavement. First of all, because the elites of the African states are fighting for the resources for forming states or kingdoms or empires. First of all, and this is here below of the African Middle Ages, because the elites needed loyal personnel. First of all, young men entrained as military slaves or guards or whatever, and specialized in security, defense, and transportation. Transportation is very important in Africa. The caravans, transportation is very important in Africa, and in this time is also the contact with the Islamic commerce, fully developed, specialized in slave trade and well capitalized. And then comes the fourth phase. This is there is putting this African phase. African phase is putting more or more in turn enslaved people into extern people, transporting them not so much, but still to the north, to the Sahara and to the Islamic territories, but now transporting them also to the coasts, where the American and European slave traders are practically waiting for the enslaved people. So the last point is that Miller insists that in Africa, the most important capital, what I call capital of human bodies, are men, women, and children. So this is the slavery in Africa. This is the bibliography. I will only say this. These are very important Africanists. Paul Lovejoy, who is it? In Latin America now, I think. John Thornton, Martin Klein, some Italian colleagues here, and a colleague from the United States. So this is slavery in Africa. Finishing this part of my paper, I would say we have to speak from the protagonism of African elites in the delivery or as a basis for Atlantic slavery for all AAA in all the time of the so-called Atlantic slave trade. When I said it already, but I like to repeat it, Africa, Atlantic, America, the 3A. When I'm speaking from America, I speak about all Americas. And the other, for specialists, well-known feature is that the Iberians, so the protagonism of African elites and the protagonism of Iberian elites. they transported first of all, in the second A, they transported 6 to 7 million of the circa 11 million people from Africa to the Americas, and all from these 11 million enslaved people who arrived alive in the Americas, all Afros, what we call Afros now, are descendants. This is I like to show this this table from this revolutionary article. Here you can see that that the British normally on the second place after the Portuguese, and the Brazilians are only the third place here, and the Spanish America, that means the Spanish, are in the second place. So Spanish America and Brazil have together this 6 to 7 millions from the total number here, from 10,700,000. So the second Atlantic, the Atlantics, first of all, the Atlantic captains, from an African perspective, the Atlantic captains are or Europeans or Americans, many of them Brazils. What we all know from slavery voyages is that the most departures of slave ships are not from Europe, but from the Americas. So these Atlantic captains, or from Europe or from the Americas, get the enslaved in this type of service factories, where guards of African Creoles, what I call Atlantic Creoles, African Atlantic Creoles, as a broker service, guard the enslaved people, the cativos, from the interior of Africa in this kind of service houses, Kibanga in Angola, and or the Barracoons in Senegal here. And then the European or American traders came and bought them or dealt with the African or the broker elite to get their enslaved for their ships. The second which I'm treating now, is characterized by the ships. Many ships and many institutions in several layers, financing the ships and getting the profits from the slave trade. But the main element for me, and now a huge field of research, are the slave ships. Here you have one of the very, very few original slave ships. This captain from the Marie Seraphique from Nantes in France, in Atlantic France, had a map maker with him on his ship, and he said to the map maker, which was also a painter, good man, I like my ship, so just make me an image of this original ship. So you have here above, you have the whole ship on the coast of the Langwa coast, and the very small boats here are bringing enslaved people to the holds of the ship. And here you have the I don't know the words in English. You have the layers of the deck. Above you see in the first deck, or the deck itself, you see that they need many water. Very important, many water, all full of water, and the other layers here also. And you see that they have so few places on the ship that some of the the crew had to sleep here in the deck itself. And the second deck, I will show it more bigger. In the second deck, it is the hold of the enslaved people. In the first part, in the right part, you see the part of the men, which you can recognize here in the iron shackles and the feet. And the left part is the part of the women, of the enslaved women in the slave deck. This is a very important image for the research of slave trade in the ships, on the level on the ships. So the estimation that we can see the scope of the enslaved people from Africa brought over the Atlantics to the Americas, we have practically 3 Atlantics, but the second Atlantic, the first Atlantic is the African Iberian Atlantic. In this time are coming the well-known 300,000 more or less to New Spain. And the second Atlantics are very interesting because normally, as I mentioned already, we all know the African Northwest European Atlantic, which is linked to the I would say to the erroneous idea of the triangle trade. The most important for us is the second Atlantic B, the African Iberian Atlántico Sul, which is Portugal, but first of all Brazil and Spain and the Americas, including also the Caribbean. And then you have in the 19th century the third African Iberian, the what I call hidden Atlantic. And here you have some numbers which are pure hypothesis, because nobody has made some real estimations. But what calls my attention, is lo que llamó mi atención en español, is that we have a huge capital for the formation of capitalism in Western Europe and in what we call second slavery. So if you only are estimating 200 to 300 silver pesos from Mexico or from Peru, then you have a huge Atlantic capital. And I'm asking me just for a while now, for 5 or 6 or 10 years, if this, together with the commodities and the infrastructures produced by, not only by, also for the enslaved and the slaveries, the Atlantic slaveries, food, drinking, working animals, whatever, ships, boats, harbors, and so many more infrastructures, and so many more things, also smaller things, machetes, iron shackles, and so on, and material for the ships. If this is not the highest value in the whole AAA, that means, casi no me atrevo a decirlo, that means, is this value higher than all the silver? Well, okay, this is desviation. Iberian Americas, the slaveries in the empires of slavery, first of all of Brazil or Portuguese and the Spanish, empire of slavery. From the Portuguese and the Brazilian, this is normal for us. This is an empire of slavery, the most important territory outside of Africa, with many Afros, to say it so. And the third are, but for the Spanish colonies, this is more or less new. So the Iberians together are the biggest slavers, or were the biggest slavers. We have two big phases in the Iberian Americas. The first slavery is not beginning with African slaveries, because the Africans were in the Western African islands still. The Iberian slaveries, or the slaveries in the Iberian colonies and in formation, sure, begins with other Atlantic slavery, with the intent was Cristobal Colon was trying to enslave Indian people in the Caribbean and send them as an other kind of Atlantic slavery to Spain. This was for the first time forbidden by the Spanish crown in the end of the 15th century. And we have other types of slaveries: Indian slavery, indigenous slavery, slaveries of indigenous, many, the scope is very high, we don't know it. In the Caribbean, called naborias as one type of indigenous slavery. We have repartimiento, which is the repartition of cativos, of captives of war. And we have a very big scope of raid slaveries. I will show just now on map. From the Conquista de Tenochtitlan, case 21, we all know it, onwards, and with the direct link between Africa and the Caribbean, what I call Atlantization. The slaveries, we have a type of first slavery, which is formed by very expensive African slaves, almost luxury slavery, and with many enslaved Indios. This is a mixed form of types of slavery, and all these types are unified under the Spanish European law, which is reinvented Roman law, as this type of first slavery. And then in Brazil is starting already plantation slavery. And then this is the raid slaveries. This is only a very generalized estimation of the raid slaveries. I would say 2 million to 3 million raid slaveries to the beginning Las Indias, first of all in Hispaniola or Santo Domingo. You have also Panuco here, so parts of Mexico. Spanish America and Brazil as empires of slavery. This comes from Andres Reséndez, as I mentioned, a very interesting map in the book of here on the left side, which is from the book of Andres Reséndez, and Brazilian slavery. I have to hurry because I have only a few minutes. I remember you that David Wheat, an Africanist who is working in this line, South Africa, Atlantic, has published a very interesting book saying that the Spanish crown was using Africans, enslaved people, as a kind of substitute settlers, because they have not enough European or Spanish or Iberian settlers and peasants, as black farmers, as Naras and Morenas of the urban population, as black farmers and peasants around the towns, and the black male population, mainly the port cities, as Latino, which means Creole practically. This is very important if we want to have an imagination how the slavers saw the enslaved people from Africa. The best images are from Johann Moritz Rugendas, who worked also in Mexico. And this is from Brazil. You have different types of African people from different groups, communities, empires, or city-states, or whatever. So the second slavery, which is new, this is invented by Dale Tomich. This is practically the question of slavery capitalism. First of all, in Cuba Grande, here on the left above. Cuba Grande, the most linked to modern technologies, with their own industrial revolution, the south of the United States, here on the right, which is also linked to an own industrial revolution. Brazil, the south of Brazil, first of all, the Vale do Paraíba, the biggest coffee producing zone of the world. Not so linked to an own industrial revolution. Only by the middle of the 19th century, they started to have too many enslaved people. Well, the begriff is very philosophical German. You know, I'm from Hegelian tradition of German scientific concepts. I took this from Marquez's chapter about Brodel, Koselleck, o problema de esclavitud moderna. In the first, Afro doesn't make any sense. The reason is, I have put it here, slave from concrete groups and so, and the slavers recognized enslaved people by their tattoos and body markings. And if they saw the individuals like was presented by Rugendas, they could say, well, this man is from this region, and they marked them also. The mark of the Atlantic slavery capitalism, to say so, is the brand marking, the new brand mark of the shoulder or in other parts of the body. The second Atlantic Afro would make sense, first of all, because in the hold of the ships, we have a mixture of some kinds different African cultures. We have the very famous beginnings of the creolization in the Americas by the carabelas, the shipmates. And we have also, this is for me very important because the research of the ships, we have also many Atlantic Creoles among the crews of the slave ships. We have many enslaved or free African cooks. We have guards, we have translators, we have more or less 100,000 to 200,000 in all the ships of the Slavery Voyages Org database. And in the Americas, in the colonial time, there is no Afro. You have in the colonial jargon, you have negrada, esclavos, siervos, negros, negros, esclavos, bozal, africano. This is an insult, or practically an insult, but the slavers were searching for bozales because they thought they were the best workers. We have Ladino, knowing Creole Portuguese or being Christian from Congo or Angola. We have Negros de Nación, which are describing a cultural area in Africa. In Cuba, for example, we have until, I think, 144 naciones. Angola, Mina, Carabalí, Gangaes, Jolof, and so on. We have negro, criollo, moreno, libre, pardo, mulatto, mestizo, all in colonial jargon, but no Afro. The Afro concept, I hope I am right, is beginning with Fernando Ortiz, with the Hampa Afro-Cubano. This is clearly Lombrosiano, and if something is using this today, this is a heavy insult. Seeing the free or the African population after abolition as criminals after Cesare Lombroso, or as sorcerers, brujos, and so on. This is Hampa Afro-Cubana practically, but Ortiz is changing to an intellectual of racial democracy, saying we, the white elite, have to recognize that there is an important part of the Cuban people, and they are influencing in the Cuban culture, in the Cuban national culture. And I call this not acculturation, I call this transculturation. I think this is a very important concept. So we have many others, Gilberto Freire and Lidia Cabrera and so on. Then we have a third point. This is the famous Gonzalo Aguirre in Mexico. We have Miguel Acosta Sainz in Venezuela to give the economy of language of the Afro-descent people, I have to use it, of the Afro-descent people a special place in the national culture as a special culture, and to give them a higher rank and to make them visible in the so-called national culture. And then we are coming to our times. The Afro-Latin America, I used it for the first time in a big project, which brought me to Cuba for 10 years, investigating the descendants of enslaved people in the Cienfuegos region. You know, the Cienfuegos region is the last developed region of industrial slavery capitalism. Until now, you have the biggest centrales, the biggest agricultural centrales of Cuba in the Cienfuegos region. And I was there doing field research for 10 years together with Rebecca Scott. And for this project, from 93 of the past century onwards, I used Afro-America and Afro-Latin America. But the start of the international career of Afro-Latin America, I think it has started. Elisa, I don't know when you started. You will tell us this. For me, or for my reading lists, is the book of Ray Andrews, Afro-Latin America, and now the big book of Alejandro de la Fuente. I could not come as a fellow to Guadalajara, and I would like to add a chapter here about Mexico. And I have the text, the first version prepared, but I have not been in Mexican archives for this kind of research, still not. And I would do that when I could come to Mexico. This is all. Many thanks for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for this really broad conceptual and global history approach towards slaveries in plural. And you have made the link directly to Mexico. So that's I don't have to say too much now. And I would like to give directly the word to Maria Elisa Velazquez, who will make a short commentary on the presentation. And then we will enter the general discussion. And I think here's the place, you know, we are, Michael has mentioned it, we are in an inter-American environment. So you can put your questions in English and Spanish. So while Maria Elisa makes her commentary, I think you will have the time now to think about good questions. So Maria Elisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Olaf, and thank you very much to all the persons that helped to organize this conference. I am honored to be commenting the work of Michel. But I'm sorry, I will speak in Spanish because my English is not so good to do it this way. So I will talk in Spanish. Gracias, estoy muy contenta, agradecida por comentar la ponencia de Michel, que es un gran historiador sobre el tema de las esclavitudes. Primero que nada, decir que voy a ser muy breve, porque tengo 5 o 7 minutos para comentar, pero quisiera hacer énfasis en lo importante de los conceptos como las esclavitudes que usa Michel para entender la complejidad y la diversidad de este complejo en América, sobre todo, en el comercio transatlántico. En este sentido, creo que también faltaría complejizar, Michel, en las esclavitudes internas, es decir, además de todos los esclavizados que llegan del continente africano y que llegan por varias vías, como tú bien lo señalas, se da el fenómeno de las esclavitudes internas, es decir, en México, durante los siglos, desde mediados del 17, pero hasta el 18, están los esclavizados criollos, que tienen un mercado muy importante y que ha sido poco tomado en consideración. Entonces, me parece muy interesante la periodización que tú haces, por supuesto, de la esclavitud, en estos 5 grandes apartados. Sí. Y la importancia de que están en todo el mundo, ¿no? Que tampoco es una esclavitud solo en África o en ciertos países de África. Y también me parece muy interesante esto que tú señalas sobre el protagonismo de los africanos en la parte del comercio de esclavizados. Después creo que además de incorporar esta visión sobre las esclavitudes internas y también sobre el comercio interno, es decir, los esclavizados que van de Belice a Campeche, que van de Cuba a Cartagena, o sea, todo lo que Huit justamente también menciona y subraya en su texto, creo que habría que sumarlo a esta complejidad de las esclavitudes que tú muy bien señalas. Ahora, me voy a dedicar un poquito, Michel, al concepto de afro, y con esto termino para dar tiempo a las preguntas. Estoy completamente de acuerdo en que el concepto de afro es un concepto contemporáneo, pero yo lo entendería en el sentido de que unos son los términos históricos, las categorías históricas, los conceptos históricos, y otras las categorías analíticas, que se van transformando en la historia con las preocupaciones presentes. Yo entendería que efectivamente hay un montón de denominaciones para los esclavizados durante el periodo colonial y después durante el siglo XIX, pero también son muy ambiguas, son muy anacrónicas. Acabo de presentar un artículo en donde justamente cuestiono cómo las categorías pueden ser tan complicadas y cómo una persona después de varias convivencias, a pesar de ser esclavizada, puede ser confundida como mestiza o como mulato blanco, en fin, o sea, una serie de categorías muy complicadas tienen que ver con los momentos también del comercio de esclavizados desde África. Tú señalas muy bien la periodización. Yo haría énfasis en cómo varió la concepción de los esclavizados, si fueron transportados en el siglo XVII o si fueron transportados en el siglo XVIII. Sí. Ahí hay muchas variaciones. Entonces, regreso al concepto de afros. Creo que es un concepto, si no completamente acabado, yo también pienso que puede ser muy debatible. Creo que ha servido para darles historia a esta serie de personas que provienen de un continente, que provienen de varias culturas, pero que antes de eso, igual que los indios, se les silenció y se les olvidó y se les menospreció su historia. Entonces, decir negro, todavía en México, es no saber si es un negro de Estados Unidos, si es un negro de Cuba, si es un negro de Veracruz. Pero además, y que es más grave, el no tener historia, o sea, el no saber por qué yo soy negro, de dónde viene esto. Entonces, el concepto de afrodescendientes efectivamente es un concepto, yo pensaría, más político, rescatado o utilizado por la academia para darle un nuevo sentido a esta serie de categorías históricas que no nos ayudaban a entender quiénes eran estas personas. Coincido totalmente contigo, y con esto termino, en que no soluciona la problemática de la complejidad. Como también el término, perdón, con esto termino, con el término transculturación. Sí. No estoy muy convencida tampoco de ese término. Me gusta más la noción, por ejemplo, de Mintz, del antropólogo Mintz y de Price, cuando escriben el libro de The Birth of the Afro-American Culture, que lo explica como una reproducción cultural, como una recreación cultural. Sí. O sea, como cuando estás en una nueva realidad, más que hacer préstamos o intercambios, que muchas veces disuelven o integran lo africano, que también son muchos, no es uno, más bien se crean nuevas culturas y con eso hay que enfrentar las nuevas realidades. Entonces, con esto termino. Me parece, por supuesto, que es muy limitado mi comentario, pero en tan poco tiempo me gustaría decir muchas más cosas. Gracias por tu texto y yo creo que tenemos mucho por delante que discutir sobre todas tus ideas y todas tus reflexiones. Gracias, Michelle.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Alisa, for this commentary. I will shortly sum up two of the main questions in English you have raised. The first one is pointing out the importance of slaveries in plural. And your main point was that you also have to take into account internal slaveries in the Americas, so the Creole market that emerged within the Americas, for example. And the second basic question is the discussion of the concept of Afro-descent, because you made the point that it's important to distinguish between historical concepts and analytical concept, and Afro-descent is an analytical concept which comes from the contemporary discussion. And in this sense, it's still ambiguous and concept, but you made the point that it was very important to raise an important debate in the Americas, especially in regard to recover, also in a political sense, the silent history of Afro-descent population in the Americas, which other concepts, alternative concepts such as Negro, Black, can't do in this sense. And I think this was the main point, and I think a really good conceptual appetizer or intervention for the debate. And now would be a little bit complicated because we have a lot of participants, but the floor is open, and I will try how we manage this. So you can also use the chat to put your questions, and hopefully we have a very vivid discussion now.
So,
yeah, the first I saw is Julia Roth, please. I will collect some questions. I will collect about 3 questions.
Yes.
Julia.
Hi, hola. I don't know whether English or Spanish is better. Maybe I'll stick to
it would be
that's what
English would be a little bit better.
Answer is possible for me, at least in any question. So hi, good to see you. Hi, Michael and everyone. I would be particularly interested in the aspect of what you shortly mentioned. What are the specificities of the forms of slavery that come up in relation with capitalism when slaves are seen as a commodity? I do think there's a crucial dimension here, also with regards to how, the naturalization of the state as being enslaved, and that in many contexts was inscribed in law, right? That this was something you inherit, no longer a state of working condition that you often just had for some time. But I'm not historian enough to be sure what your take on that would be, and also the relation to race, of like racial capitalism, and when race comes into the play as sort of the framework in which we see capitalism. And the second question refers a little to the terms also, because I just attended a panel at Harvard together with Mati Steinitz in the context of Carlos Alejandro de la Fuente, and there was a harsh debate by activists, particularly from so-called Latin America, who were against those terms also of Afro-Latin America, because they said this is a very US-centric perspective, also to say Latino or Latino-Americano or Latin American, since this is nothing the people in these contexts would use. I agree with Olaf that this the distinction between analytical concepts and others is important. But sometimes I, as a cultural studies person, maybe not so tied to inscribe myself into this disciplinary thing, tend to try to also take serious terms that are used, for instance, by activists, such as I have done a little of research on Afro-Cuban feminism, and there's a book called Afro-Cubanas, and they consciously use this concept, not Afro-Latinas, but Afro-Cubanas, and I know that in other contexts in Mexico and so on, the ones sort of that are still Afro-descendants tend to use it as a political term. How you see that as a historian, maybe also. Thanks.
No, I have Jochen Kemner on my list, and I think after that we give you a chance to answer it, because it's a lot on the floor.
Yeah, thank you also for my part, Michael and Maria Elisa. I think the discussion on the concept is really very important, but we surely have also the possibility to dive into it in our Congress in Guadalajara in September, Afrontar al Frente, where you will both be and hopefully in presence. So my question is more from a CALAS perspective on our research topic on crisis, and would be how you would relate slavery to crisis in the American context. Because of course, no, slavery went through a lot of crises in these more than 400 years of existence. But especially in the last part, no, in the 19th century, when in a lot of territories of the Americas, slavery was already in agony, and of course abolished, not from really from humanitarian perspectives, but because of it became economically inviable. And then you have coined with Dale Tomic the topic of the idea of the second slavery, and as you've mentioned in the region like Cienfuegos, where in the context of the crisis of slavery emerged a system which in a kind of way was highlighted what was possible with slavery, you know, and this context of industrialized slavery, or that no, slavery can work in an industrialized context. So yeah, my question would be if you, in your work now as a CALAS fellow, how you will relate the history of slavery in the Americas to the concept or to the idea of crisis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
yeah, of course.
Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Jochen, for the questions. Me gustaría más hablar en español, pero voy a hacerlo en inglés para que Olaf no tenga que traducir todo.
Yeah, that's better for all of us.
Yeah. So the question, Julia, Afro-Cubanas is very important for Cuba. You know that Cuba, after the revolution, they had an official policy to say we stopped the racism and there is no racism. And in the official external space of Cuba, first of all in Santiago, you would, or I would say, this is so. I know this is very complicated because we have in the last, with the crisis, Jochen's question, we have many problems with the Afro-descent population, which is poorer than generalized, poorer than the white. But Afro-Cubanas is in this way very important because with this Afro-Cuban women are beginning, Reyita and so on, and Daisy are beginning, Ohilda Levia Lanier and so are beginning to debate the new concept, the new analytical categories, how Maria Elisa was saying, because you know we have a big scope and big part of the so-called Afro-Cuban population, including intellectuals, Fernando Martinez Heredia, which were saying, don't come me with Afro. I'm a Cuban, and I'm longer Cuban than many of the Spaniards who came in the 20th century. My family is here for 200 years or 300 years. Antonio Maceo, Valterio Carbonell, con su very important book, how was forming the Cuban culture in '61, saying that the part of the Cubanos Negros for the Cuban culture was much more higher than the white elite and so on. So this is a complicated question, Julia, but I'm happy that they are beginning now for the last 10 years or last 20 years, also beginning with Daisy Rubiera, I think, and with circles of women in Cuba debating this concept. The second point, the capital of human bodies. This is very for capitalism, for slavery capitalism. If I explain it as a historian, you have, as you see in this PowerPoint part of the estimations of the value of pieza de Indias, you have first in Iberian economic thinking, you have this kind of value categorization. Nor the English, nor the French, nor nobody other had this categorization of pieza de Indias. And pieza de Indias means that I bring a very, very high-priced body. It should be young. It should be, at the best, it should be a young man, or it should be a woman, or in the 19th century, many children of 7 years onwards, that you can educate as an enslaved worker in your. So they bring huge capital of human bodies together with other types of capital, but the capital of human bodies is the most important, and they bring it to Brazil, to Cuba, and to the United States. I would like to have more smuggled from Cuba to the United States, to say that we could say this is not only an internal development in the south of the United States, but I'm not sure that we can find it. But Cuba is a very good example. This is practically this slavery capitalism and this industrialization. Not an industrialization of English or European type. We all know Industrial Revolution is a category lanced by British historians, economists, and so on. They have their own. With this four types of capital of human bodies, they have their own industrialization. They have their own technologies. They have their own infrastructures. They have their own cities. They have their own science. They have their own very big group of doctors. The development of Cuban doctorship is from Fidel Castro, but it comes from earlier times. It comes from the masses of plantation doctors. So this is the importance, and it was very important for me to put in a very high meta level of the development of capital in the Western world and in the whole world, this type of capital of human bodies and animals. But now I will not speak about animals, but animals are also very important as working animals and food and so on. But without this type of capital of human bodies, you will not have this type of capitalism. And you would not have this type of racial capitalism, because they know very well, the white elites of Cuba and the south of the United States and also the Brazilian and so on, they knew very well that they need racism for controlling this big part of the population. So Jochen, yeah, crisis is very good, and richness is also very good as an conceptual part of the research. I like Humboldt. This is very traditional normally, but I like Humboldt. I like the context of Humboldt. In Mexico, I will see the context of Humboldt in their richness, and what slavery and slaves and intern slave trade and so on, what role plays this for the hosts of Humboldt, Humboldt in English. Crisis. Well, the first crisis, global crisis, is Haiti, Saint-Domingue. In a very high level, a political level, the global crisis of this type of development, which is reaching until the final years of the 19th century, was a very, very important economic, cultural, scientific development of slavery societies or empires of slavery, is Haiti, because the French are beginning this type of massification and this type of using so much as they can of capital of human bodies, that they bring them all to the Plain du Nord. And there you have one plantation in the limit of the other, and so you have a very important possibility to signalize when you are making revolution. This is the famous flames of the Plain du Nord, and there is one of the biggest revolutions of world history. The second is when I'm looking at very close to the archival material, you have rebellions, many rebellions in Cuba, linked to the political chronology of Spanish colonialism and Cuban separatism and nationalism. But if you go something closer, you see that you have extremely many murderings, as is described in the sources of Mayorales. Now you have many, as Gloria Garcia put it down, and you wrote it in your book. You have many rebellions and criminal cases against overseers and so on. And the third point is you have in all the countries with big populations of Afro descendants in Venezuela, you have 100 years of war. Not the title of Garcia Marquez, which is more or less Colombia, but it includes also Mexico. You have always a big part of the population that you can revolutionize or use in civil wars against other elites. This is the history of Venezuela until from the beginnings of the Simon Bolivar independence revolution until 1930, until Gomez, which are doing then dictatorships, military dictatorships. So what I will say is that for the crisis, for the political crisis, you have always in big groups of the population, because they are so poor, nobody knows what to do with the liberated or abolished slaves. So this is a big part of the crisis. That's all.
Okay, so we have a next question by Birte Förster.
Thank you very much for your enlightening talk and also for the comment. I do have a question regarding the place of slavery in history today. And my starting point, being not an expert in the field, is the debate going on in the US on the year 1619, the year when the first slaves arrived in the then colony of Virginia, and their meaning both to the economy, but also to the development of political thought. And there is a reframing, a highly contested reframing of US American national history going on. And I was wondering if and you already mentioned Cuba, are there similar developments in other countries in the Americas, or maybe the US is late to the party and this has already been done? So I'd like you to comment on this debate on 1619, and preferably both of you if you want to. And also, yeah, my question is do you see similar developments in other countries in the America? Thank you.
And question by Eleonora Roland, please.
Yeah, thank you, and hello as well from me. And thanks for the presentation and commentary, very intriguing and thought-provoking. Something that I'm working on myself, and actually teaching a course on African slavery and tropicality this semester, and some of my students are actually here with me. I was wondering about this issue of Afro and sort of its geographical and climatic location, if you will. I have not studied the history of the terminology at all, so I don't totally trust you that this is a modern invention, but we do have a sort of a geographical and kind of pre-modern climate determinism or idea kind of in slavery, or especially African slavery as well, as at least as far as my own research goes so far. And I was wondering, throughout your research, did you happen upon this issue? Is this something that you would also kind of include into your perspective, or where would you fit that in? And where does it maybe also fit in with the Afro concept? Thanks.
So I think it's fine sir, to answer these. I would say now last two questions because time is running out, and we would give you time enough to answer these two questions sufficiently. So Michael, it's up to you.
Yeah, thanks. I know very well the historical literature about 20 or so odd Negroes which were coming to Virginia in 1619. I don't know very well the debate in the United States. I have to say this, but I would be happy to say it very shortly. If this debate and the coming of enslaved African Creoles, like Ira Berlin was saying, in the first generation of the enslaved in the former British colonies, would play a bigger role against the Pilgrim Fathers. This enslaved people was already there and played a very important role. I have to say I'm a fan of the books of Ira Berlin in this first generations of enslaved people in North America or in the former British colonies. But I'm not so familiar, I have to say it. I'm an Americanista, but I'm not an Americanist. This what I would like to say to the question of 1619 in the other Latin America republics. I'm not sure. There is a debate in the Caribbean and in Mexico, first of all with the books or with the publications of Matt Restel, that the African people from Spain were coming with the conquerors. That the conquerors were not only the well-known Spanish low aristocrats like Cortés and others, but there were also enslaved or ex-enslaved people from Spain, which were Enriquillo. I think it's the name of the first of one of the first black conquerors, and there is a debate of the equilibrium of two groups or some groups of conquerors, including black people. This is I think it's the main. We have no debate. I think I don't know very well Chile or so on, but I don't believe it. We have no debate that African people is coming first when we not are thinking on the more or less utopian literature about African ships before Columbus, which may be, but we have no evidence of this. The tropicality is very, 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 very important. I'm not a climate historian, but I'm a Humboldtian, and you know that Humboldt was interested in all types of climate. He was not a climate expert, as many are saying. He was not a green climate expert, but he was very interested in all types of climate. When you only read the ship voyage from Barcelona in Venezuela to Havana in Cuba, 1 month in the Caribbean, what he is writing about bodies of water and how we can say this in English, and the air over these bodies of mixed water and water which was whatever moved water and so on. It is very interesting. But this is more or less a natural science or climate science. For the tropicality is very important Sao Tome. Sao Tome is a tiny, you can, if you look at a world map, you will not see Sao Tome. In the Bight of Benin, is invented, are plantations, sugar plantations, what we know in the modern time is invented in the north plain of Sao Tome. Because the Portuguese are sending Jewish childs to Sao Tome, and the Jewish childs, 2000, you can read it. There are many stories about the Jewish childs in which the Portuguese king sent as an forced diaspora to Sao Tome, and they are. How I can say that they need the cativos, the African people, to know how to live in the tropics under other types of weather, under other types of rain, under other types of food, under other types of wind, under other types of heat, and so on. Without the enslaved cativos in Cabo Verdes, the Canaries, and Sao Tome, the Europeans cannot expand into the Atlantic space, into the islands of Western Africa. You know that the Portuguese have heavy problems to conquest Africa. They never conquered Africa, excluding the part of Congo, of the reign of Congo, of the Empire of Congo, that's Ndongo, which would be Angola, the very coastal regions. And the need for all this, for the very complicated natural history, climate history of Africa, medicine history, new forms of enfermedades, what's the name in English?
Epidemics.
Sicknesses, yeah, with new forms of sicknesses. Yeah, this is so. There's this tropicality. Without this tropicality, we have no expansion, European expansion, without learning what to do with this conditions of tropicality by the enslaved people and the not all enslaved African women who are marrying to Portuguese mariners in Africa and come with them to the West African islands and show them how this works in the tropics.
So thank you. For me, it's nothing left to say thank you all for this, especially Michael Zeuske and Maria Elisa Velazquez for this insightful and encouraged discussion and presentation, and you all for your participation in this event. And hopefully we will see in another presentation, colloquial, may it be at CALAS, at Bielefeld University, at Jena University, or at the Afro-Latinity conference of CALAS. And for all of you, a good evening, a good day, wherever you are. And so thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation. And I think it's the last applause. You open the microphone for a last applause for all.
Thanks.